The Girl in Chains. The prison planet Zarnak-9 was dark, cold, and full of pain. Every wall was made of black steel. The floors were hard. The air smelled like smoke, blood, and fear. This place was made to break people. In cell block 17, a young alien girl sat on the floor. Her arms were tied with glowing cuffs. Her head was down. Her purple skin was bruised. Her name was Rayla. Every day, the guards beat her, not because she did something wrong, but because it made them laugh. They called her the soft one. They kicked her when she walked too slowly. They pulled her by her silver-white hair. They told the others, "Look, she's crying again." The other prisoners watched in silence. Some looked away. Some stared. No one helped her. Not one. Rayla had once been proud. She came from a noble family on a distant planet called Illyria. Her people were peaceful, smart, and beautiful. But during a war, she was captured and sold like a pet. Now she was here, a toy for cruel men. She didn't scream anymore. Not because it didn't hurt, but because screaming only made them enjoy it more. One morning, everything changed. A loud sound echoed through the prison. A new transport ship had arrived. A fresh group of prisoners was being pushed inside. Among them, a tall human man with short black hair and cold eyes walked quietly. His face was hard, his muscles strong. He looked dangerous. His name was Jax. The guards looked at him and laughed. "Another meathead," one said. "Let's see how long he lasts." They put him in the cell next to Rayla. At first, he said nothing, just sat in the corner, watched everything. But Rayla noticed something. He didn't look afraid. He didn't flinch when the guards yelled, and he looked at her, not like the others did. Not with pity, not with hate, but with curiosity. That same night, Rayla was dragged into the hallway. 4 guards laughed as they threw her to the ground. One of them held a long electric rod. "You were too quiet today," he said. "Let's see if we can fix that." They started hitting her again, harder than before. But this time, someone was watching. Jax. From behind the bars of his cell, he watched every strike. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. One guard kicked Rayla in the stomach. She coughed, blood spilling from her lips. Then, she looked up. Her eyes met Jax, and something passed between them. The next morning, everything felt different. Rayla limped into the dining hall. Her face was swollen. She held her side in pain. She sat alone. As always, Jax walked in. He took a tray of food, and while everyone walked straight to her table and sat down. The room went silent. Rayla looked at him, confused. "You shouldn't sit here," she said softly. "They'll hurt you." "I know," Jax replied. "I'm watching." Later that day, the guards decided to test Jax. As Rayla walked back to her cell, one of them pushed her hard. She fell. Another raised the electric rod again. Before it landed, Jax stepped in. He grabbed the rod midair. The guard was stunned. Jax yanked the rod from his hand and snapped it in half. The silence was deep. Rayla stared at him in shock. The guards pulled out their blasters, but their hands were shaking. "This ends now," Jax said quietly. No one had ever stood up for her. No one had dared. That night, Rayla lay in her cell, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, she felt something strange. Hope. The human watches. For the next 3 days, the prison was quiet. Too quiet. The guards walked slower than usual. They whispered when Jax passed. No one dared to mess with him now, not after he broke the electric rod like it was a stick of dry wood. But that didn't mean they had given up. They were watching, and Jax was watching them back. Every move, every breath. But more than anyone, he was watching Rayla. She didn't speak much. She barely even looked up when food was passed through the cell door. Her bruises were healing, but her soul was still heavy. The other prisoners now looked at her with surprise, even fear. They whispered, "Why did the human help her? She's just an alien. She's not even from his world." But Jax didn't care what they said. Every night, he sat in his cell, silent, awake and alert. His bed remained untouched. His eyes always scanned the hallway between his cell and Rayla's. One night, he heard soft crying. It was her. Very quiet, almost like the sound of wind blowing through metal bars. "You still cry?" he asked softly through the wall. Silence. Then, "Only when I know no one can hear me." Jax leaned back against the wall. "You didn't scream when they beat you." "I learned that screaming only feeds them," she said. He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I know that feeling." "You've been hurt like that?" she asked. "Worse," he replied. A long silence followed. But somehow it wasn't empty. It was filled with a strange comfort. The next morning, things took a darker turn. A new group of guards arrived. These ones wore black armor and masks that covered their faces. They didn't speak. They didn't laugh. They just pointed to Rayla's cell. One of them opened the door and motioned for her to come out. She didn't move. The guard stepped in and grabbed her roughly. Jax stood at the bars. "Where are you taking her?" No answer. The guard pushed Rayla hard. She fell to the floor. Jax's knuckles turned white as he gripped the bars. Another guard raised a taser and shocked her. She screamed. That was the first time Jax heard her scream, and it made something inside him burn. Hot, violent, dangerous. He slammed his fists against the bars so hard, the whole section shook. "Let her go." The guards looked at him. No emotion, no care. They dragged Rayla down the hallway. Jax paced his cell like a caged lion. Every few minutes, he'd stop and listen. But there was nothing. No sounds, no footsteps, no screams. Just silence. Then, 4 hours later, they returned. Rayla couldn't walk. Her face was pale. Her arms hung limp at her sides. Her clothes were torn. Blood dripped from a cut above her eye. They threw her back into her cell like garbage. Jax gritted his teeth so hard he almost cracked a molar. That night, he made a decision. He would not let this happen again. "Why did they do that to you?" he asked softly after the guards left. Rayla turned her face away. "They say I'm royalty, that I need to be broken, so I can be sold." Sold. To rich collectors. Alien pets. They don't see us as people, only as prizes. Jax was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Why don't you fight back?" "I tried. Once. They killed my friend in front of me. A girl who looked like my sister. After that, I stopped trying." Jax closed his eyes. Memories flooded back. His own battles, betrayals, the death of his squad. He had been sold out by his own people. Framed. Abandoned. Sent here to rot. Now he had nothing to lose. "I'm not like the others," he said. "They can't break me." She looked at him through the bars. "Then why are you here?" He didn't answer. But his silence said everything. The next day, the guards came for Rayla again. But this time, as they reached for her, Jax stepped into the hallway. They paused. "You'll have to go through me," he said. They laughed. Gladly. But they didn't expect what came next. Jax moved fast. Too fast. In seconds, 2 guards were on the ground. One was bleeding. The others pulled out tasers, but Jax didn't care. He took the pain like it was nothing. He stood tall, chest rising and falling, eyes like fire. "I told you," he growled. "This ends now." That night, no one slept. The whole cell block buzzed with whispers. The human attacked the guards. He protected the alien girl again. Who is this guy? And Rayla, lying on her thin mattress, stared at the ceiling with tears in her eyes. Not from pain, not from fear, but from something she thought she had lost forever. Someone cared. Someone stood up. And for the first time since she was captured, she didn't feel alone. He steps in. The warden of Zarnak 9 was furious. Inside his high-security office, he smashed a metal chair against the wall. His veins bulged. His eyes burned with rage. A human prisoner dares to touch my men, to protect the alien girl. One of the guards, limping and bruised, nodded nervously. "Ah, yes, sir. He injured 2 of us. We tried to stop him." "Shut up," the warden roared. "He's not just protecting her. He's starting something. A spark." His voice lowered. "A spark can become fire, and fire spreads." The guards looked at each other. They had seen it too. The way the prisoners had watched Jax. The way they whispered when he passed. Respect. Hope. Dangerous things in a place like this. "We'll make an example of them," the warden said with a cruel smile. "Public punishment. Tomorrow. In the yard. No one will dare follow after that." Rayla knew something was wrong. That morning, instead of food, the guards came with chains. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She only asked one question. "Where's Jax?" They didn't answer. But she saw the bruises on their faces, and something deep in her heart grew warm. He tried to stop them. They dragged her through the metal halls, past the other prisoners' cells. One by one, the prisoners stepped to the bars. Watching. Silent. She kept her head high, even though her body was sore and tired. In the middle of the prison yard, a platform was built. A metal pole stood tall in the center. Shackles hung from it. "Bring her," the warden commanded. They pulled Rayla forward, but just as they reached for her arms, a voice echoed through the yard. "Let her go." It was Jax. His face was bloodied, his shirt torn. But his body stood firm, strong as stone. He had escaped. The prisoners gasped. The guards turned in panic. Blasters raised. "Stand down," the warden shouted. But it was too late. Jax walked onto the platform. Rayla stared at him in shock. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I told you. This ends now. They'll kill you. They've already tried." He looked at the guards. "You want someone to beat, someone to chain up. Chain me." Silence. Total silence. Then the warden gave a slow, cruel smile. "Fine. Chain him." The guards rushed forward and locked the shackles around Jax's wrists. They tied him to the pole. His back was bare. His breathing was calm. The prisoners lined up behind the fence. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Watching. A guard picked up a long electric whip. Crack. It landed on Jax's back. He didn't cry out. Crack. Another strike. His muscles tensed. Blood trickled down. Crack. Rayla screamed, "Stop." But Jax turned his head and gave her a look that froze time. He smiled. A calm, brave smile. "For every time they hit you," he said, "they'll hit me instead." Tears filled her eyes. "No one's ever done this for me," she whispered. The prisoners were no longer quiet. Someone shouted, "Enough." Another, "Free him." The guards aimed their weapons at the crowd. The warden shouted, "One more word and you all die." But the voices grew louder. Chants began. "Let him go. Let her go. Down with the guards." The prison was changing, and the warden knew it. That night, Jax was thrown into the infirmary, barely conscious. Blood soaked the bandages on his back. Rayla snuck in, past sleeping guards, using an old ventilation shaft. She knelt beside him and wiped his face. "You're crazy," she whispered. He opened one eye. "Yeah, I know." "Why?" she asked, holding his hand. "Why take my pain?" "Because someone has to. And if I don't, no one will." She pressed her forehead to his. I'll never forget what you did. A pause. I don't want you to take the pain alone anymore. From that night on, Rayla never walked alone. And Jax was never just a prisoner. He was something more. To her, he had become a shield. To the others, a symbol. And to the guards, a threat. The next phase had begun. A human had taken the pain of an alien girl. And now the galaxy would hear of it. The bond that forms. The days after the punishment felt different. Something had shifted inside Zarnak 9. The prisoners no longer looked at the ground when the guards passed. They looked up. They looked at Jax. At Rayla. And they nodded. Not many spoke, but the silence was no longer fear. It was respect. Even the guards began to walk more carefully. They never came alone. Always in groups, always with weapons drawn, and they avoided eye contact with Cell 17. Inside that cell, Jax was healing. Slowly. Rayla brought him what little food she could steal. Bread crusts, bits of fruit, even water saved from her own cup. She cleaned his wounds using torn cloth from her own shirt. Every time he winced in pain, she looked away, not wanting to see the strong man suffer. But Jax never complained. "You don't have to help me," he said one evening. She looked at him, offended. "You took the pain meant for me. You think I'd just leave you bleeding." He smiled. "You've got fire." "I had to," she whispered. "Before I met you, I only had fire. No light, just anger." Jax nodded slowly. "Same here." That night, they talked for hours. Rayla told him about Illyria, her home planet. The floating gardens, the violet sunsets, the glowing rivers that sang at night. She spoke of her sister, who had been taken by the slavers first. Her voice cracked when she said the name. Velen. Jax listened quietly, never interrupting. Then he told her his own story. "I was a soldier," he said. "Special ops. I was sent to a world that didn't exist on maps. We were told it was a recon job. But when we got there, it was a trap." He looked at his hands. "My squad was wiped out. I survived. Barely. I found out my own government sold us out to cover up an illegal mining operation." Rayla's eyes widened. "Your own people?" He nodded. "I didn't stay quiet. I spoke out. I brought proof. I tried to get justice. And they sent you here. Labeled me a traitor. They needed me to disappear. So, here I am." Rayla reached out and gently touched his hand. "You're not a traitor. You're the only real human I've ever met." For the first time, Jax's eyes softened. Something passed between them. Something more than just pain. Something real. The next day, a strange sound came from the central hallway. Prisoners pressed their faces to the bars. Guards rushed in panic. A ship had landed. Not for transport. Not for supply. A buyer had arrived. The warden personally greeted the visitor. He was tall, dressed in red armor with golden patterns, his face hidden behind a smooth silver mask. "The auction is ready," the warden said. "Our prize asset, the alien female, is in stable condition." The masked man said nothing, but he handed over a case of glowing crystals, enough to buy a small moon. Rayla had no idea what was coming, but Jax saw the movement. He heard the whispers. They were selling her. At night, he broke the vent system open, crawled through the tunnels, bruised and limping, until he reached the old server room. There, he found a half-broken data core, ancient tech from before the war. He hooked into it with wires and circuits stolen over weeks. His fingers moved fast, his training coming back to life. He was building something. A way out. Rayla was pulled from her cell the next morning. This time, she didn't cry. She stared straight at the guards, calm as stone. In the auction room, she was forced onto a platform. Lights shined on her like she was a stage performer. The masked buyer stood below. The warden stepped up beside her. "We present our finest specimen. Noble blood, Rare DNA, strong body, weak spirit. Jax was in the shadows. He had made it. He watched. He waited. Then, he flipped a switch. The lights cut out. Sirens screamed. The power grid failed. The room went dark. In the chaos, smoke filled the air. And then, a voice through the speakers. "This is Jax, the human you tried to break. Today, you'll learn why we don't break." A small explosion rocked the room. A guard screamed. Rayla dropped to the floor, grabbing a fallen stun baton. Out of the shadows, Jax ran to her side. "Can you move?" he asked. "Yes," she said, fire burning in her eyes. They fought their way out, step by step. Jax disarmed 2 guards. Rayla shocked another and kicked his helmet across the floor. They ran through the vent tunnels. Alarms echoed. Lights flickered. They reached the east wing, where old mining vehicles were stored. Jax threw open the hatch of a broken hauler. "This thing can fly?" Rayla asked. "Only once," Jax grinned. The ship roared to life. Behind them, guards stormed into the bay, weapons drawn. Jax pulled Rayla inside. The doors slammed shut. Shots fired. The engines flared, and the ship lifted into the sky. Zarnak 9 faded behind them. For the first time in years, Rayla was free. And she wasn't alone. Blood and rebellion. The ship shook violently as it climbed through Zarnak 9's toxic sky. Smoke rose from the rear engine. The control panel sparked. Warning lights flashed red. Jax gripped the controls with both hands, sweat dripping from his brow. "We're not going to make it into space," he muttered. Rayla stood beside him, holding onto a railing as the ship jerked again. "Then what do we do?" Jax pointed to a mountain range just beyond the jagged ridges. "We land there. Hide. Fix what we can." The ship dropped hard. Below them was nothing but black rock and ash clouds. Jax pulled the lever and aimed for a rocky outcrop. With a loud crash, the hauler skidded across the ground, sparks flying, until it slammed against a cliffside. The ship groaned. Metal bent. But they were alive. For now. Hours passed. Rayla built a small fire in the shadows of the mountain. She wrapped Jax's arm, which had been burned during the crash. He winced but didn't complain. "We're not safe, are we?" she asked quietly. "No," Jax said. "They'll track us. The warden will never let this go. You embarrassed him. I exposed him." She stared into the flames. "We need help." "There is no help," he replied. "Not unless we make it." Silence. Then Rayla stood up and looked at the stars. "Maybe there is." Jax raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "My people," she whispered. "If I can reach my people, they'll come. You said you were royalty. You think they'll listen?" She turned to him. Her violet eyes glowed softly. "If I'm still alive, they have to." Jax gave a tired grin. "Then we better build a signal strong enough to shake the stars." Back at Zarnak 9, chaos had taken root. The prison wasn't a prison anymore. It was a battlefield. After the escape, prisoners refused to return to their routines. Food deliveries were hijacked. Guard towers were destroyed. The ones who used to watch silently now fought back, with stolen rods, makeshift weapons, and fists full of rage. They had seen the human rise. They had seen the alien girl escape. And now, they believed. One prisoner, a scared, one-eyed brute named Revo, rallied the blocks. The human bled for her. He didn't even know her. If he can fight, so can we. In less than 2 days, 5 blocks had turned. Guards retreated into the command sector. The warden called for emergency backup from the nearest military station, but no one answered. No one cared about Zarnak 9 anymore, except those inside. The prison was now under siege. From within. Meanwhile, Jax and Rayla scavenged wreckage from the hauler. Using scrap metal and wires, they built a tall antenna on the edge of the cliff. Rayla climbed up, braving the wind and biting cold. Jax handed her the final power cell. "This might be our only shot," he said. "You sure your people will hear it?" "I don't know," she said, "but I have to try." She pressed her hand against the crystal communicator built into the device. It glowed, recognizing her DNA. A soft hum. Then a pulse of light shot into the sky. It vanished into the stars. Rayla stepped back. Now, they waited. That night, they sat around a second fire. Jax leaned against the rocks, staring at the flame. "You know," he said, "I thought I came here to die." Rayla looked at him. "And now?" He looked at her. "Now I think I came here to find you." She didn't speak, but she reached out and took his hand. They sat like that for a long time. Two broken souls, healing together. 3 days later, a deep rumble echoed in the valley. Jax stood up, alert. Over the horizon, ships appeared, sleek, silver, glowing with blue energy. Rayla gasped. "It's them. It's the royal fleet." The lead ship landed with a soft roar. The hatch opened. Out stepped a tall alien woman in golden armor, eyes glowing with light. Behind her, warriors stood in silence. "Rayla," the woman said. "Is it really you?" Rayla ran to her and hugged her tight. "Sister." Jax stepped back, watching quietly. Veland looked at him. "And who is this?" Rayla turned, her voice strong. "This is Jax, the man who saved me." Veland studied him. "He's human." "Yes," Rayla said proudly, "and more honorable than anyone I've ever known." Veland bowed her head slightly. "Then he is welcome in our kingdom." But far away, the warden of Zarnak 9 stood on top of the ruined prison walls, watching fire spread below. His guards were gone. The prisoners had taken over. And as he stared into the rising smoke, a small device in his pocket blinked red. A message from the stars. Rayla lived. And she wasn't hiding anymore. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Escape from Zarnak 9. The sky above Zarnak 9 turned a deep, unnatural red. Smoke rose from the crumbling walls. The main tower had collapsed, and the guard barracks were burning. The prisoners had taken control of the lower levels. Fires lit the darkness. Shouts of rebellion echoed through every metal hall. The prison planet, once a fortress, was now falling apart. But the warden still held one thing: the command center. High above the chaos, locked behind thick walls and blast doors, the warden stood watching surveillance feeds. He clenched his fists as images flashed on the screen. Guards fleeing, prisoners arming themselves, food stores looted. But what made his teeth grind the hardest was the face of Rayla. She stood in the center of the landing zone, beside her sister Velen, wearing new silver armor that shimmered with light. Around her, elite Illyrian warriors moved swiftly. They were freeing the prisoners, one cell block at a time. And beside Rayla, always, was Jax. They returned. The warden hissed. She brought them back. And she brought him. The last surviving officers around him exchanged nervous glances. "Sir, we should evacuate." "Evacuate." The warden spat. "This is my domain." He slammed his hand on the table and activated the lockdown. Sirens blared. Massive steel doors fell across escape tunnels. Turrets powered on across the yard. Rayla turned toward the control tower. "He's sealing the planet," Velen said. "He knows we're winning." Jax stepped forward. "Then we take the tower. End this." Velen hesitated. "It's a fortress." "I've broken fortresses before," Jax said, loading his blaster rifle. "Besides, we don't have time. If he sends a distress call to the slave fleet, more will come." Rayla nodded. "Then let's move." Jax led the charge with Rayla at his side. The group of rebel prisoners, now armed and trained by Illyrian warriors, stormed the path to the command sector. They moved like lightning, clearing hallways, shutting down defense turrets, unlocking doors for the still imprisoned. Along the way, prisoners joined the fight. A towering alien with 6 arms crushed a blast door. A small woman with robotic legs hacked a control panel mid-run. They weren't prisoners anymore. They were soldiers. At the base of the tower, Jack stopped. He turned to Rayla. "This part's going to get messy." Rayla gripped her energy staff. "Good." With a deep breath, they pushed through. Inside the command tower, guards fired down from metal balconies. Jax rolled behind cover, pulled Rayla close. "Take left. I'll take right." Together, they moved like a storm. Jax fired with precision, knocking guards from ledges. Rayla jumped with speed and grace, dodging bolts and striking with her staff, each hit sending shockwaves through the air. A final blast door stood in their way. Jack stepped up and planted a small explosive device. "Ready?" he asked. Rayla nodded. "Let's end this." Boom. The door exploded inward. Smoke cleared. And there he stood. The warden, now in full armor, holding a plasma blade in one hand and a detonator in the other. He smiled. "You've come a long way, alien girl." "Let them all go," Rayla said coldly. "Or what? You'll stop me? With this human by your side?" He chuckled. "You're nothing but a frightened child who got lucky." Jack stepped forward. "She's not alone." The warden lunged. Their fight began. Blades clashed. Sparks flew. Jax blocked the first strike, countered with a punch to the ribs. The warden staggered but recovered quickly, swinging his blade low. Rayla dove in, striking the back of the warden's leg. He roared in pain, slashing wildly. She barely dodged, but Jax didn't. The blade sliced across his chest. He fell to one knee, blood soaking his shirt. "Jax!" Rayla screamed. The warden raised his blade for the final strike. Rayla's eyes flared bright white. A pulse of energy exploded from her body. It threw the warden backward, slamming him against the wall. She ran to Jax's side. He was alive, but fading. "No, no, no," she whispered, holding his face. "Don't you leave me now." He smiled weakly. "Told you I break fortresses. You don't get to die here," she cried. Villain and the warriors stormed in behind her. They surrounded the warden and took him down in seconds. It was over. Zarnak 9 was free. Hours later, medical ships arrived. Jax was taken into surgery aboard the Illyrian flagship. Rayla stayed outside the door the entire time. When he finally woke up, weak and bandaged, she was right there. "You're terrible at staying out of trouble," he whispered. She laughed. "And you're terrible at pretending you're not a hero." He looked into her eyes. Soft, warm, alive. "I didn't save the galaxy," he said. "Just one girl." She held his hand tight. And that changed everything. Back on the surface, the prisoners walked free. Chains were broken. Cells were empty. And the sky, once gray and heavy, was now clear. A new dawn was rising. But far across the stars, word of what happened on Zarnak 9 was already spreading. The human who took the pain for an alien girl and started a rebellion. The human who chose pain. 3 weeks had passed since Zarnak 9 fell. The planet once known for pain, chains, and silence was now filled with voices, free voices. Rebel prisoners were evacuated. The prison towers were turned into clinics and homes. Ships flew overhead with banners of peace and freedom. And high above the planet, in the orbiting Illyrian flagship, Jax stood before a council of aliens who once feared all humans. Now, they stood and bowed to one. He wore a black and silver uniform, specially made by Rayla's people. He still limped slightly. His chest still ached. But his eyes were sharp. And his heart, stronger than ever. The council chamber was huge, filled with glowing crystals and floating holograms. Illyrian leaders, warriors, healers, and advisors from dozens of systems had gathered. Velen stood beside her sister, tall and proud. Rayla wore her ceremonial robes, a crown of soft silver leaves around her head. But her eyes never left Jack's. She had waited for this moment. Velen raised her voice. Let it be known that this human, Jax of Earth, risked his life to defend one of our own. Not for reward, not for politics, but because he believed no one deserves to suffer alone. She turned toward him. Jax, for your courage, we offer you a home among our people, citizenship, honor, and a title only given once every century. The room quieted. Velen continued, protector of Ilaria. Gasps filled the chamber. It was not just a title. It was a legend. The kind of honor children would read about for generations. But Jax didn't step forward. He looked around, then back at Rayla. I'm not a hero, he said. I'm just a soldier who got tired of watching good people suffer. He paused. I didn't save a world. I just stood up when no one else would. Velen smiled. That's what makes you worthy. The council clapped. Some wept. Some stood in silence, moved beyond words. Later that night, on the deck of the ship, Jack stood by the railing, looking down at Zarnok 9. Rayla joined him. The stars above glowed brighter than usual. You could have gone home, she said softly. To Earth, he asked. They threw me away. Besides, this feels more like home now. She nodded. Because you're needed. Because unwanted, he corrected. Then he turned toward her. I meant what I said back there. I didn't save a world. I saved you. And in doing that, she said, stepping closer, you saved me. Not just my body. My soul. My hope. There was a long pause. Then she reached up and gently touched his scared face. You chose pain. For me, she whispered. I'd choose it again, he answered. She smiled and kissed him. Not because he was her hero, but because he had become her equal. Across the galaxy, stories of the human spread. Whispers turned to messages. Messages turned to broadcasts. Did you hear about the human on Zarnok 9? He stood between an alien and a beating. They tortured him. He stood tall. He didn't run. He didn't surrender. He chose the pain. The legend grew. To some, he was a ghost soldier. To others, a rebel leader. To Rayla, he was simply Jax, the man who saved her, not with weapons, not with strength, but with heart. And through him, humans and Illyrian people began to talk. Not as enemies, but as allies. Maybe even as friends. Years later, a museum stood on what remained of Zarnok 9. In the center, under a beam of soft light, stood a broken metal pole with 2 chains still hanging. A plaque read, "This is where the human stood. This is where one soul chose pain, so another could heal. This is where hope began." He was just a human in a prison full of monsters, but when no one else cared, he took the pain of someone who had already lost everything, and in that one brave moment, he gave the galaxy something it hadn't seen in years, a reason to believe again.